So, an attempt at a simplification of science, fields, electromagnetic fields, and our consciousness and how they interact. You can go into details and study all this. My dad, like I've said, was a nuclear physicist. And I used to remember watching him on our sailing trips with his egghead buddies, talking about multiple universes and this and that and da da da. And I would pipe in from a spiritual perspective, and it would just blow their minds. They would just like, we can't accept that you could have any insight into this, especially if you're only 22 years old. But this is why the yogis and the mystics feel this stuff directly. They feel it directly instead of studying it from the outside. And that's what science is going to be reaching, a dead end or a live end, a reopening, where science and mysticism and spirituality are rejoining together. Now I'm going to do it very simply for the layperson here. You can get, and I'm not a super expert, and super egghead scientists are going to look at what I talk about and they can rip it apart. I understand that. But basically things like the double slit experiment, the Jekyll and Hyde nature of the electron being basically both energy, a wave, and a solid particle. Newtonian mechanics, the guy, remember, who had the apple drop on his head, we think things are physical. You push on something, it pushes back. Basically Newtonian mechanics. Energy can't be destroyed or created. Newtonian mechanics turns out to be absolutely just an approximation, right? Now people forget that Newton was really an alchemist. His public face was Newtonian mechanics, but he spent his whole life being interested in alchemy, of course, the real energetic structure. Now here's what I was just watching. The whole new thing lately about the torus field, that we're actually made of fields. Like Nikola Tesla says, if you want to know the secrets of the universe, this passes around the internet now, you learn about frequency and vibration, and light, frequency, and vibration. So we're moving from solid particles into light, frequency, and vibration. That's what really makes up the universe. Every cell in your body is made of molecules. Molecules are made of a few atoms put together. Each atom is basically 99.99% empty space. Somebody has said once it's like standing in the middle of a football stadium and you're holding a pea in the center, a little tiny pea in the center of the football stadium. There's some dust particles floating around the nosebleed section of the stadium. That's an atom. That's how much empty space it is. That dust particle is the electrons, and the nucleus is that little pea. Now it turns out, of course, the nucleus isn't even solid either. Feel this. I'm going to simplify all this stuff for all of us that are like, I get overwhelmed, E equals mc squared, double slit experiments, Jekyll and Hyde, quantum mechanics, Bohr, the Schrödinger, the uncertainty principle, Maxwell Planck. All this history is just overwhelming. And now the torus field, and now we're talking about primer fields, right? These are fields. Or like Lynn McTaggart wrote, I haven't read the book, but I can feel that stuff. She said, the field, it's a field of potentiality. Now just feel this. All of it is going to turn back on that we are turning back on ourselves. We are, every time you search on the outside, every time you look in the mirror, what is the mirror? The mirror is the material universe, quote, material universe. The outer universe is a mirror of that which is within us. As within, so without. We're learning that our beliefs and how a person believes affects the actual reality. What you expect is what you get, right? What you look for is what you find, you know. What is looking is what finds stuff. In other words, what you're like is how you find the universe. That's why when you buy a new car, you start seeing that car everywhere, because you're tuned into that. Very simple example. Here's what I just felt. Even these new studies on the primer fields, or the torus field, which I work with, the heart energy process is literally spinning and counter-rotating these torus fields. If you want to awaken your heart, that's a softer thing than the Merkaba fields of Thoth, the tetrahedral triangle spinning, counter-rotating to create a stargate is mechanical mental for me. The torus fields feel more soft and organic. It's just a matter of preference. But this is what I just saw. All these fields that we're discovering, the primer fields, the torus field, are still approximations. They are still reflections of our inner consciousness. As a human being is looking out, that's what they see. You are looking at yourself. All the study of science, all the study of the outer is simply a reflection of that which is in us. And so science is going to reach a dead end when it starts to have to deal with consciousness. It has to deal with consciousness and realize we can't go tighter and tighter and smaller into the Hadron Colliders or CERN, you know, spending billions of dollars on these linear accelerators and Hadron Colliders and opening little black holes, the Higgs boson and all that stuff, right? Now I know that's baffling. This is what all we need to know for spiritual people. All of it is made up. All of it is potential fields of energy. Imagine this. You are a piece of the source, or you have a direct link up to the source. I am directly connected to God's source. We are a chip of the old block, made in the image. Consciousness is consciousness, whether isolated in a little human ego or not. Right? You are that. Now, the whole universe is just a vast field of potentiality. Imagine being out in space with nothing, no stars, just in space. But the 0 point field, meaning there's potential everywhere. It's ready to grow or create anything that a piece of consciousness comes and decides that it wants to look at and create. You are that piece of consciousness. You are that God source. Every teacher says so. And this is going to be the direct experience of more and more millions of us. So when you as a piece of consciousness come out into the field of potentiality that appears as nothing, empty space appears as nothing. No molecules, there's nothing out there, it's a vacuum. But there's a potential field, there's a potential white hole and a black hole and a potential Big Bang happening all the time. Guess who elicits the Big Bang? Guess who elicits to bring, who sucks out, who brings forth, who elicits, brings out of the universe, the Song of the One, the whole created universe? You do. Your piece of consciousness out there. I said, just imagine 0 point. There's no space or time. You're just the pregnant point. The ancient Rig Vedas call it in ancient Hindu Veda traditions. The pregnant point. That's what we are. We are the potential pregnant point of eliciting the universe. So all science, these primer fields we're discovering, these torus fields, Newtonian mechanics is old-fashioned. It's fields of energy. Yes, it's true, but guess who creates those fields? You do. That is simply another reflection, just like our ideas of how things were in the Newtonian world were that way. The fields, the torus field, the primer fields, these magnetic, electromagnetic fields, is still ideas inside of us. It's all made up. By who? By you. As a pregnant point of potential consciousness. So that point of consciousness, above the fifth dimension, by the way, we are not bodies. Or in the fifth dimension, we start just being spheres, orbs. The most basic fundamental shape in the universe is an orb. Planets aren't square. They don't look like human beings. Suns and planets are orbs. Most basic because it's really a point with a body. What's the point? That's the point. We make up our own bodies. So when you go above the fifth dimension, and this is all made up too. You see, the dimensions are made up. The 7 chakras are made up. I'm trying to bring it really fundamental right here. You're simply a non-existent point, a point that has no space or time. That is the pregnant potential point of a soul, piece of God's source. That piece of God's source, potential point, creates all that is. So as you move in to a 0 point field, which the whole universe is, it goes, what do you want, Master? What do you want, Mr. Khan? It doesn't even, there's no thought process, obviously. But it just, you will elicit out of it. It is ready to spring into materialization. It is ready to spring into creation. Let there be light. So light gets created as the first creation. By who? By you. By you. So all these are approximations. The basic fundamental thing is we are the pieces, the points, the non-existent points, even though it's the closest thing our minds can understand, a point of consciousness that literally draws out of the 0-point field, of the sea of potentiality, it draws out creations by simply having what? Ideas, thoughts. You create whole universes populated with beings and plants and stars and so forth. It's all a giant game. So all these ideas thinking we're reaching a final truth, oh, it's the torus field that creates everything, like, the Thrive movement, right? The dodecahedrons, these are the basic shapes. Yes, it's all true, but even that is a made-up game. That's a made-up game. They're all made-up thought creations that we, the human, and any and all beings, sentient beings that have this ability across the universe. If you're connected to Source, you have this ability. Humans happen to have this ability. So even all these fields we're going to discover, the more fundamental building blocks, even if you have evidence for it, look, there it is in that nebula, this particular X shape and so forth. Yes, it's true, but it's still a made-up game by the consciousness that you are. That's why every teacher says, the kingdom of heaven is within you. You are God. You are the creator. I am just like you, Buddha, right? Krishna, it's all love. It's all a game. Let's play. So here's the fundamental teaching with all this. As all these things, Tesla, primer fields, the electromagnetic it's all energy and fluxing fields, right? The whole universe. But the basic thing is there's a field of potentiality, if you will, but it takes the point of consciousness, you, piece of God source, to elicit, to draw out from the creation around us any and all created universes. We make up the worlds, literally. And of course it's a fun game to get lost in it. You can imagine if you know you're a God forever and ever, amen, and you create all things, that it would be fun to get lost in it and start to have to remember who you are by studying the outside. That's the scientism approach. Study the outside manifested world, studying the mirror to find out about yourself, never really looking at yourself. But science is now going to come back to that point where we were in Atlantis and Lemuria and many civilizations across the galaxy, where we join science and, quote, spirituality. There's really no distinction between the two. You are the creator source God. So when you get bamboozled with all this stuff, the scientism and quantum physics and all this, if you're not interested in that, all you have to remember is, me as a piece of source God literally am in charge of materiality, reality creation. You're not the God in a sense until you are. When you merge into the oneness, you are part of, as Yogananda would be fond of saying, the wave is still part of the ocean. We are the waves. We're experiencing some separation or some getting up there looking, then we're back into the oneness, So we are the pregnant point of potentiality that elicits from the 0-point field around us all of the creations, all the different star systems, all the different ideas. And it all begins with thought ideas. This sounds very, very much like all the creation stories. Why? Because that is the creation story. And guess who creates the realities? You do. We do. You as a piece of God source. This is a huge reawakening that millions of people will be experiencing at this time on Earth. So, don't get befuddled by science. Don't get overwhelmed by science. Just, you can remember that I am a piece of the source God. And that's your only job, to remember, to realize, make it real in your own eyes, that this is in fact so. Alright, I hope that made some sense. I just had this feeling that, to remember, it's all made up. It's all approximations. Alright. My computer is calling me again, as always. All right, thank you.